Well, well, now it's being recorded. Knew I forgot something. For later, for viewing on Mass Bay RRE's YouTube channel. A link to that page is on the meeting page of our website. At the conclusion of tonight's program, we'll stop the recording and the Facebook live stream and invite those of you, the webinar attendees, to join the main Zoom meeting to say hello or chat with fellow attendees. If you'd like to be admitted to the group, please use the Zoom raise hand button to let us know, and we'll admit you to the meeting as fast as possible. It is a one-at-a-time process. And if you'd like to speak, be sure that your microphone is not muted. It's also probably a good idea to be wearing pants. And now for tonight's program. Laura Katz-Smith, archivist at the University of Connecticut Archives, is going to give us an overview of their railroad collection in a program we're calling Steaming Through the Archives, the Railroad Collection at UConn. I'd now like to hand things over to Tom Chase, one of Mass Bay RE's directors, who was instrumental in arranging tonight's program to introduce Laura. Tom?
Thank you, Dave. Laura Smith has been an archivist in the UConn Archives, overseeing the business, railroad, and labor collections since 1999. Her talk to Mass Bay RRE today will highlight many aspects of the collection and provide information on how to learn about and access the resources. She will also provide some information on how to preserve your personal collection and how to work with an archive to donate your materials. That's the intro from Callboy. But I was curious to find out where Laura had gone to college, maybe grad school, and positions previous to UConn. That's how I used to introduce people at art and archives conservation meetings. I didn't come up with any answers, but I did run into an author archives page for her in the UConn library. Now you're going to have to wait a second here, because I'm going to start up something here if we're lucky. Oh. One more time. There we go. And she can't. I ran onto a paper.
Don't forget to share your screen, Tom.
Oh, wait a minute.
This is what happens when you don't attend the rehearsal.
I know, it's terrible. I think I got this on the right screen.
There we go.
Can you see the dog?
You bet.
Okay, finest kind. Oh, now I've lost my script. Hey, this is terrible. This is the reason when you don't attend a rehearsal. I didn't come up with any answers, but I found her author archives page, which includes the short but happy life of Jonathan the First, our first mascot, obviously a husky, and a charming paper on
let me guess your interest.
No, here it is, on Maurice Sendak. Which I immediately printed this out so my whole family can see it. We're all Sendak friends. We love Maurice Sendak. But I want to say this. So this was sufficient credentials for Laura. I didn't need to look anymore. But I want to say personally thanks to Laura for being a friend and helping in many ways in research and collaboration. I hope we'll eventually talk a little bit about other archives. Laura helped me particularly by conducting a tour of the UConn archives for Linda Zollers, archivist of the Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington Museum. It was a great eye-opener and an education for both me and Linda. I regret not taking any pictures of the tour. The only picture I have of Linda is Linda and my family in our living room. So this has to stand for a wonderful tour. My last COVID-based encounter with Linda with Laura was to look at the only copy in the any Connecticut library of the Barger book on Pullman cars. Laura volunteered to come in during the COVID epidemic and set up a table outside the archives so that I could look at it. But she also went and pulled out everything Pullman in the archives, and it included this wonderful book on the Pullman Company cars after the company had gone bankrupt, or gone. This on the birth of a Pullman car from the August 1939 issue of Railway Purchases and Stores, a lot of ephemera, and also most important for us, this promotional brochure, which happens to show a car exactly like the one that was in the 1891 wreck. I mean, exactly the same configuration and everything. So this was wonderful. Many thanks to Laura. Now I'll keep quiet and let her talk. And Dave's already told you about registering your questions in the chat box, and Laura will answer them after the presentation. Now I've got to unshare my screen.
Okay. So
Now I'm going. Oh,
wait a minute.
Let me share my screen yet. It's not letting me share yet, Tom. I think you're gonna have to get.
Oh, here it is. It's okay. This multiple monitors, Laura. I apologize. Take it over.
It's great. Okay. I am going to start my talk. Well, thank you, Tom, for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Dave, for inviting me to speak to your group. I'm always happy to speak to researchers, potential donors, anyone with an interest in railroad history of the region. I mean, you're pretty much my core users, so I'm always happy to reach out to you all. Again, I am Laura Smith. I have been an archivist at the University of Connecticut since 1999. Prior to that, I was an archivist at Virginia Tech, and when I was at Virginia Tech, I among the collections I oversaw was the Norfolk and Western and the Southern Railway records. So I've for 34 years now, I have been overseeing railroad records and working with railroad researchers, which has always been a pleasure. So our archives is located in the Thomas G. Dodd Research Center on the Storrs campus at UConn, and we're about a half hour east of Hartford. And the thing is, first let me say that my talk is probably going to be 45 minutes long, and I've got my PowerPoint and whatever. But no matter what I do tonight, I am thoroughly scratching this. I'm merely scratching the surface of what this very rich and very exciting collection holds. It's a tremendous collection with just boundless research possibilities, and I can only give you the barest amount of information at this point. So I'm going to invite you, at this time, if you want to know anything more, I'm always available to be consulted with. Okay, so in the archives, it's not just railroad. We don't just have a railroad collection. We also hold the university's rare and special book collection, the university archives, and archival collections on many different topics: Connecticut, regional history, alternative press, natural history, human rights. This is a photo of the building, and I have been told by many railroad researchers how much it looks like a roundhouse, and I have been asked, with all seriousness, was that deliberate? When the building was built in 1995, was it deliberately modeled after a roundhouse because somehow they knew it was going to hold railroad collections? And it was not. But I love that it does have that look. I feel like it's a special place for railroad history. So in my archives, we have about 6 archivists and some other, and then we have a unit head and a research services coordinator. And we all have our thematic focus. As Dave told you, I oversee the business, railroad, and labor collections. Just a little bit of, just to give you a background on kind of how we operate. Our collections do not circulate. Here, let me advance. When you enter our building, you're entering into our reference room. all of our collections must be viewed in our lovely reading room. This is our reading room, which unfortunately has been empty for the last 15 months. We are normally open Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. Of course, not now. We're closed. We do have policies. We have forms to register. We ask that researchers put their bags and coats in the coat room. We have very high security protocols. We researchers may only access one box at a time. You know, there's glass that allows us to always observe researchers. Security for the materials is very important to us, and we take that very seriously. It is an open collection, meaning we do not place any restrictions on our collections unless they are restrictions that are imposed by the donor or by the condition of the item. Meaning if it's an extremely brittle item, we will have some restrictions with access. We have closed stacks, so you cannot go in and browse our stack area. Materials must be requested at the reference desk and viewed only in the reading room. So I'm just gonna kind of click through some images while I talk right now. We have 24,000 feet of storage space with over 1,200 named collections. Again, you know, in many different subject areas. A collection can be literally one item, or it can be 1,000 boxes. It depends on who you know, it's under the creator or the collector of the collection. I would say about 80 of these 1,200 collections are railroad related. Although many of them, you know, are enormous. So just because it's only 80 in here, using air quotes, many of them are very extensive. Many of you contact me for research. I do request that if you have a very complex question, please do not just show up at our reading room, because to be bluntly honest with you, of our staff, I'm really the only one who knows the railroad collection so well that I can really help you with your consultation. Contact me before your visit. Don't just show up. If we can talk first, often I can advise the best portions of the collection to that you can access, and often I can pull the boxes ahead of time so that the boxes are ready. We don't have to waste any time with us, you know, going into our storage areas and getting the materials. You know, we have everything ready. You can start your research as soon as you enter the reading room. For long distance researchers, you know, I do a lot of research into the collection for people who are who cannot come to Stores Connecticut. I cannot do extensive research on anyone's behalf, but you know, if you pose a question to me, I mean, often, you know, with the question, you can pose a question to me and I will know immediately whether or not we have the item that you're looking for, or I can know immediately if we don't have the item. But there are many, many questions. The thing is, the great thing about being an archivist is that I never get the same question twice. You know, I've been an archivist for 34 years now. I never get the same question twice. So it's just endlessly fascinating and endlessly, you know, this investigation into the collections. So often I get a question where people are asking for something and I might say, you know what, I'm not sure, you know, let me do a little bit of legwork for you to let you know, even know if it's worth your trouble to come to Stores. So if you contact me ahead of time, that way I can say to you, you know what, we definitely don't have what you want. You know, there's no reason for you to come to the archives, or I can say, yes, we have what you want. I can make a quick photocopy of, or, you know, scan of it for you. And here you are, you have the information you need. Or I can say, you know what, you're going to have to come here and do your own research. And I will be talking about later what we think will happen once the pandemic shutdown is completely over. You know, we are going to be opening up our reading room again. probably at the end of the summer. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the collection itself. The core of the collection are the corporate records for the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. That is really the basis of the collection. The New Haven Railroad, its predecessor companies, and we do have much information, although not the company records, of the successor companies. So, you know, we don't have the Conrail and the Amtrak records, but we do have information involving those, in Penn Central. We do have information involving those railroads. Generally, you know, I will accept material on the railroad in southern New England. I really can't branch out too much beyond that, because frankly, I have my hands full with, you know, with just southern New England. It's, you know, there's more than enough information to fill the archive. So in the 1980s, UConn was designated as the official repository for the New Haven Railroad corporate records from Penn Central's successor, which at that time was the law firm. We also got materials that were deaccessioned from Yale and their former office building in New Haven. The corporate records, and here I like to, you know, here you're seeing into our stack areas. You're seeing boxes of the corporate records. The corporate records are 3,050 linear feet, and it's presidential and upper administrative records, a lot of real estate, financial, earlier legal documents. The largest, a very large component of the collection are the board of directors minutes and financial records for many predecessor railroads, like the New York, New England, the Central New England Railway, the Housatonic, the Naugatuck, the Old Colony. Although bear in mind, there is a very large and significant railroad collection at Baker Library at Harvard University. So we're not the only ones who have New England railroads. Okay, so now, okay, so we have these the core collections, but we have, you know, almost 80 other affiliated collections that were collections of photographs and maps and timetables and annual reports and research files and materials that were gathered from the original company, you know, because in the 1960s, when the company was in bankruptcy and, you know, under its trusteeship, it was pretty much sloughing off its records. And for instance, Mr. Dave Peters of Wallingford, Connecticut, he had the presence of mind to gather a lot of things that were literally being thrown away. And he saved them for posterity, and we were lucky enough to get his collection in 2017. And I know his son, Mr. Dave Peters, will be speaking about that later. You know, an archive gets like a core collection, and then we become known as the place for a certain type of research. And then people who have those kind of collections, they contact us, and, you know, we start to work together on donations, and a collection develops. So this collection has been kind of in the works for the last 25 years, and it's grown to, you know, thousands of square feet. And even though I don't have a definite number of items, I usually ballpark that we have somewhere around 500,000 photographic images, and at least, you know, a couple million individual pieces of paper type of items. When I am working with a donor, when I'm considering items for donation, I am only interested in their research value. I am not interested in the necessarily in the artistic value of a photograph. I don't see them as like works of art. I see them as, what are they saying about history? What is their historical worth? And I, for sure, do not care about their monetary value. That is that is immaterial. The only people who care about monetary value are the insurers for the university. You know, we do have to declare a monetary value, but that's only for the insurance for the university. When I'm working with materials, it doesn't matter what their monetary value. And just so you know, I get a lot of inquiries from people who want me to appraise items, but I am not a certified appraiser, so I cannot praise archival items. So just so you know. So again, when I'm looking at a collection, does it, you know, I'm thinking, does it fill historical gaps that we have in the collection? Does it have a new take on a subject? You know, what does it say about history? Because I'm dealing with historians. I'm dealing, you know, that's their use for me. You know, I get a lot of questions. Who uses the collections? Well, sure. A lot of people who have like an avocational interest in railroad history. You know, people who grew up around trains, or you know, they have their layouts, or they're, you know, railroad buffs. I know that's not always a preferred term. I deal with a lot of people like that, but these collections are useful, and I'm constantly communicating with like lawyers and surveyors, especially about property materials. The lawyers and surveyors always want to access the maps and real estate materials. Also property owners, excuse me. Property owners, genealogists, the media. I've consulted with meteorologists who want images of like the 1938 you know, Great New England hurricane, how it affected the railroad. Graphic designers, advertising agencies. It is amazing how these materials are used. It's far beyond what you would think. It's not a niche collection. It has widespread implications. And not only that, I am constantly accessing this collection for when I teach classes. I teach classes to UConn students, and also I speak to groups, you know, middle schoolers and high school students, and even adult learners. And there are aspects of these collections that are very useful, like town histories, or you know, or any kind of transportation history. It has extraordinary implications. Okay, let's show you a couple more images, and then I like this image. This one gives me a chuckle. Okay, so very quickly, how do you find out about us? We do have a webpage, and it is, as you can see, lib.uconn.edu/location/ASC. ASC stands for Archives and Special Collections. Basically, if you just Google UConn Library, you will get to the archives and you will see everything that we have. There are, so when you're in the website, we do have individual collection pages for our themes, and I do have this railroad history page. It just gives brief information, but it has some links that I think people are interested in. But the most basic way of finding out about the collections is we have a collection management system which tells you about the collection. It does not show you examples from the collection. It tells you about the collection. So it's at, again, if you're just Googling UConn Library, you can get to this, but archivesearch.lib.uconn.edu. So there is just kind of an all-purpose keyword text box, but you can, if you go to a section called Collecting Areas, you will see that there's a list of our themes, and you can find just a list of the railroad collections. Again, this shows you what we call finding aids to the collections. Click on one finding aid and it will give you information, kind of puts the collection in context, and then it will list what is in the collection, you know, the photographs. And when we have collections, we organize them on very different levels. You know, there's some collections that literally have an item by item description. Some will have folder by folder descriptions. Some will just have a general box description. It depends on the size of the collection. It depends on how popular we think the collection will be. You know, we might bring in a collection and we see that it's automatically, instantly, you know, people want to access it. So we usually think at that point, well, let's get a more detailed finding aid. Actually, that is what happened with the Peters collection. As soon as I got it in 2017, people wanted to access it. So I was able to get a student assistant to do like virtually an item by item description of this enormous collection. And it's been invaluable. It's been just amazing. There is a keyword search box. If you search just for the word railroad, you'll get 11,000 hits. So when you're searching in our collection management system, you do have to narrow it down. Now, that's how you find out about the collection. To see examples in the collection, we do have a digital repository. We are part of the Connecticut Digital Archive, and which is available at ctdigitalarchive.org. Now, Connecticut Digital Archive has collections from almost 50 cultural heritage institutions, museums, libraries, archives, historical societies in the state of Connecticut. But it's not just Connecticut history. You know, every institution can choose what they have. The UConn side of it, we are at archives.lib.uconn.edu. And then if you want to just browse for the railroad collections, going to the business and industry or the Connecticut history sections is usually, you usually hit railroad collections that way. And of course you can do keyword searching. Again, if you just do a search for railroad, you're going to get many thousands of hits. So try to narrow it down. I want to bring to your attention a really extraordinary digital repository called the Digital Public Library of America. You can see it has, you know, over 40 million materials from hundreds of repositories all across the nation, and I think even some internationally. It's just it's an extraordinary resource. And if you go to dp.la, Digital Public Library of America, it's amazing. And Connecticut Digital Archive is one of the contributing members to the DPLA. Okay, so in our digital repository, you know, I'm constantly adding material to the digital repository, but it is a drop in the bucket to what we actually have. You know, as I said, we have about 500,000 images. You know, maybe you'll find, you know, 5,000 railroad images in there right now, and maybe the same number of documents. But there's some really exciting materials that you can find in the digital repository, and most notably is an almost complete set of the New Haven Railroad valuation maps from 1915. So they're very detailed. In fact, you know, these are the maps that surveyors and lawyers and property owners want to access constantly. So it's really extraordinary. I placed all of our issues, which is, again, almost complete. It's the earlier years is complete. I don't have everything into the 1960s, but along the line, the New Haven Railroad's employee newsletter, which really gives you just such an incredible, you know, just incredible view of the railroad workers. And, you know, when I get genealogy questions, this is really the only source that I can send people, because we really don't have any personnel records. Also, we have an almost full run of the New Haven Railroad's Riders Digest, which they produced for their ridership during the World War II years. There are some kind of quirky things that are railroad related. just that I want to bring to your attention. We have an interesting set of daily journals from a man named John L. Merritt. He was a telegrapher and an agent for the New Haven for many years, and he was station master, let me see, for East Canaan, Connecticut, and Lee and Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And it's just so interesting having these diaries, because he's talking about his daily work as a station master, but also he talks about world events, in the 1930s and in the build up to war, and these railroad materials can be used in many different ways. This item, this really fascinating photographic print, I received this kind of out of the blue from a woman in, I think, Colorado. She had it, and when I received it, it was very brittle, and it was tightly rolled. And so I brought it to our conservator. We have a conservator in-house, and she flattened it, and we got it scanned. And just this past week, I got an inquiry about this item because someone identified his father in this photograph. So it's just a beautiful item. Okay, so again, I told you there are, we have so many materials, but what I'm going to be showing you is just such a small percentage of them. I can only hope that at least it will wet your whistle. How about that? So one big area that we have a lot of photographs are, we have a lot of photographs of the New Haven Railroad's stations and structures. A lot of, just thousands and thousands of station photographs. We also have, again, from the Dave Peters Railroad Collection, we have a set of photographs that were taken when the railroad had to create its valuation set, created the maps, and they also had to take photographs of all of their property. So the Peters collection is the only collection that we have that has these extraordinary photographs of just, like section houses and railroad yards, and here you see coaling plants, and just these kind of esoteric structures that belong to the railroad. Again, we have sets of photographs. Fran Donovan lived in Midway, Massachusetts. He was a great collector. His father worked for the railroad in the early 1900s, and he amassed a tremendous collection. He died in, I think it was 2006, and we got his entire collection from his widow. Again, a Dave Peters collection. Fran Donovan. These are just some examples. We also have a lot of photos that show disasters to the disasters in New England and how it affected the railroad. Great Blizzard of '88, the New England Hurricane 1938. We have a very large set of photographs taken by company photographer Charlie Gunn. He was company photographer in the mid-50s for the Patrick McGinnis. Well, Patrick McGinnis was the president, and unfortunately, the Great Floods of 1955 occurred during that time, and he took hundreds, thousands of photographs of the damage to the railroad line during that time, and we have those photographs. They're really tremendous. We also have kind of the older wrecks. The great, I know Tom will like this one, Great Thompson, the East Thompson Railroad wreck in Essex. And another enormous area of where we have photographs are of the engines of the New Haven Railroad. These are the older ones. We have photos that are pretty much all through the history of the New Haven Railroad and their predecessors, of course. you know, from the mid 1800s all the way, frankly, to the present day. Fred Otto Makowski was an interesting fellow. He lived from 1888 to 1952. He lived in the Springdale area of Stamford, and from like the 1920s to the 1940s, he took it upon himself to photograph like virtually every steam and electric locomotive that went through the Stamford Railroad Yard. And so what we have are, this shows you when we received the collection in the early, and I think it was 2002, they came in those black scrapbooks, you know, the black paper scrapbooks that are just terrible for photographs because they deteriorate and they you know, they become flecks. So we removed every photograph from the scrapbooks. Here you can see the black paper that it was stuck to, and we put it in archival quality binders just to preserve it. Many of these photographs in the Fred Otto Makowski collection are available in the digital repository. Harry Brown was an electrical engineer for the railroad in the time of the electrification of the railroad in the teens to the 30s, and he got these beautiful, trackside photographs showing the catenary and the anchor bridges, and just these gorgeous photographs showing the electrified zone. We have the collection of Jack Swanberg, and many of the photos are from the New Haven Railroad. You know, he started taking photos when he was a teenager, and now he I'm not going to give you his name, but he's far older than a teenager, and he's still taking photographs. And we have the promise of his collection. Upon his death, his collection will be coming to UConn, but he is allowing us to scan his photos and put them in our digital repository at this time. So right now we have about 2,500 of Jack Swanberg's photos in the digital repository. Another one. Seth Holcomb was, he just loved trains. He lived in the Hartford area. He loved steam trains. And so the collection that we have are only steam trains, but it seemed that once the New Haven stopped, ended its steam in 1954, he just stopped taking photos. So all we have are these great photos of steam trains. And of course, here he took one of track workers in 1947. William Higginbotham was, he lived in the New York area in the 50s and 60s. And he took these beautiful photos of the trains. But the important thing about his collection is that he gave these beautiful details of the photos. Here you can see, every detail of the train, its route, exactly the point where the photo was taken. I got to tell you, that is just complete gold, to a researcher, to history, having photographs that are described on that deep level. It's just amazing. James Wall was, he was a teenager or his early 20s in the 1930s, and he would travel around with a friend and just extensively take photos of New Haven and Boston and Albany and Boston and Maine trains. Bob LeMay made his donation of his collection beginning in the early 2000s, and Bob just meticulously described the photos that he took. you know, I did say that, you know, we have New Haven, but we also have its successors. So here you see, you know, we have Metro North, and Bob, let me tell you, Bob was is co-author with the late Joe Snopek of Diesels to Park Avenue, the FL9 story, published in 1997. So there are a lot of FL9s. And this photo is one of about 150 that Bob very recently donated to us, showing the progression of the renovation of the Neantic River Drawbridge. So, you know, stuff like that is great. Not only are we seeing, you know, we're not seeing just one photo of this one drawbridge, but we're seeing its whole evolution just as a historical tool. It's just extraordinary. It's just incredible. Louis Benton, I think his photos might be familiar to many people who know New England railroads. You might not know his name, but you kind of recognize his photos because he wrote on each one its location. We have many photos that were taken by this kind of obscure but regionally well-known photographer. I'd like to tell us.
Pardon me for interrupting, but we've had a request that you change the slides perhaps a little slower.
Oh,
people are really trying to absorb the images here. So.
Okay, well, okay, actually, I'm almost done. So, let me talk about this one that let me tell a story about this one. So this is the Granby, Connecticut station. The photo was taken in 1930. And I have a railroad researcher friend who is kind of his name is Bob Beletsky. You might know him. He's done a lot of work with Connecticut railroad stations. And he came to the archives and he requested the box that held this photograph. And he was looking at it in our reading room, and he called me over and he showed me the photo, this very photo that we're looking at. And you see how there's this man standing on top of this boxcar. When we looked at the photo, we couldn't see the man. There was no image of a man, but Bob had seen this image before and he knew there was supposed to be a man on top of the boxcar. So we're looking carefully at the photo and there was a little drop of white out. I think we're all of the age that we remember white out. There's a little drop of white out that obscured this man's image. And we wondered why, you know, that certainly happened before the item came to the archive. I did not do it. None of our researchers would have done that. So I brought this photo, this print, to our conservator in the library, and she carefully scraped off the whiteout. So what I love about showing this photo is you think you know what's going on in a photo, but even a photo from the 1930s, there are ways to alter it and kind of change history, you know, as it were. Okay, so I'm kind of wrapping up here. So we do have a Facebook page, and actually I control the Facebook page. So I do try to post about about the railroad collections as often as I can. So we are facebook.com/UConn Archives. And we have a Twitter feed, although I don't control that one. And as Tom showed you earlier, we have a blog, and I do try to write about railroad topics. You know, unfortunately, Tom didn't show any of the railroad essays that I've done, but I have done several for the blog. And I wanna just let you all know that I just days ago I completed a video about the New Haven Railroad's Comet train, which was its streamlined train in the 1930s. And this is its website address. And yes, I know it's long, but again, just Google UConn Library or UConn Archives and go to our exhibits page and you'll find this one. And I'm very proud of it. So, you know, so if you take a look at it, I'm happy to be happy if you do that. So let me just talk a little about, I do deal with a lot of researchers and people who have donations about their collections. And just let me just tell you some things that, if you're thinking of making a donation, or even if you're not thinking about a donation, but if you have your own collection. What I like to tell people is, and I'm going to be blunt here, you're going to die someday. If you want your collection to come to UConn, or if you want to donate it to another archive, you need to be talking with the archives now, before your death, about your collection. Let me tell you, just today, I got yet another email from someone who says, my parents are downsizing, they're moving out of their house to a smaller house. My father has a railroad collection. We need to do something with it. Can I talk to you about it? So, which is great. I'm happy to talk to the family now about the collection, but, it would have been great if the man who created the collection might have contacted me, years ago, before it became like a rush, before it comes to the point where, oh my gosh, we need to deal with this right now because we're moving out of the house and this railroad collection's here. I ask, just think to consult with me now. If you leave your collection to the UConn archives without even consulting us beforehand, and that has happened, people have told their family, oh, when I die, just give it to UConn, but they haven't notified me. so if, if you're planning to do that, just be advised that if a collection comes to me without any kind of, talking to me about it first, I am under no obligation to accept it. Just because you've willed your collection or sending me your collection, doesn't mean I have to accept it. I tell people we are an archives, we're not the town dump, meaning anything that comes to the archives is meant to come to the archives. Dave Peters knows that when I was working with his parents, I was very choosy about what I was taking. I could not take the entire museum because we just don't have the space, and also I'm taking things only for their research worth. I can't take a dozen various railroad spikes because that's not really research worthy. Okay. Items must be unique and have research value. I also will not, a lot of people come to me with books, but I have hundreds of railroad books. I'm not going to take a duplicate. We need, if someone makes a donation, they must sign a deed of gift, which means that you are transferring ownership of the materials to the University of Connecticut. That is kind of non-negotiable. We will not take an item like on deposit or on loan or anything like that. It has to be a donation to the University of Connecticut. If you are the creator of the materials, we try to get you to, we would like to have copyright, and for us, copyright is not a financial thing. We're not making money off your copyright. It's so that publishers can publish your materials. If you do not give copyright to anybody, then your materials cannot be published. Even if you just verbally say it, your materials cannot be published until 75 years after your death. That is what current US copyright law dictates, unless you deliberately give copyright to the archives or to another person. But frankly, if you're giving the collection to an archives, please give us copyright. If you don't want to give up your collection before your death, make sure your family knows to contact us, or put it in your will that the collection will come to UConn. Again, please, sorry, wait a minute. Let's go back to that page. Put it in your will. And just let me give you some very basic information about how to preserve your collection, you know, even if you're not going to donate it to an archives, there are basic things you should do to ensure that it lasts into posterity. The 3 worst places to store your collection are a basement, an attic, and garage. Now, where do I usually find the collections when I go visit people in their homes to look at their collections? Well, in their basement, their attic, and their garage. For obvious reasons, just because those areas are not humidity controlled. Usually they're exposed pipes, just it's especially attics, nesting grounds for rodents. It's a mess. So I usually advise people to store their collections like in an interior closet, like a bedroom closet is a good place, and certainly have it boxed to prevent exposure to light and dust. Dust can really do a lot of damage to collections. So that's what I'm telling you now. That's all I can tell you now. I think I've used up my time. I've told you just the barest minimum of what I can tell you. There's so much to know about this extraordinary collection. But now, questions. Do you want me to stop sharing my screen, Dave?
Yes, I think that would probably be appropriate. And I'm going to start off. I have a few questions.
Great.
And I have a few questions that were posted on the Q&A.
Okay.
I'll start off with the ones that were on the Q&A because they sort of cover different ground. And I suppose at some point, if any members of our panel, Bob LeMay, I did elevate you to panelist, so you're welcome to chime in here.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Hey.
So anyway, we had a few questions from George Bulow, so I'll just go through them. When the New Haven was effectively a monopoly in southern New England, it owned steamships, trucking lines, and other transportation-related non-railroad companies. How deeply do the archives address this aspect of their business?
Okay. The predecessor company records that I told you about, the board of directors minutes and the financial records that we received, that it does include steamship and trolley and electric line information, or documents. And also, I'll accept it. I have like a whole set of maps for Connecticut Company. And I have a very strong collection on trolleys. Many of the collections do have a lot of trolley photographs as well. Not a tremendous amount of steamship. I can think of just one collection that might have like a substantial number of photographs of steamships. And I think the Peters collection does have some steamship information. It's not terribly strong. But there are, if it's related to the New Haven, I will accept it and we'll preserve it.
Great.
Yeah.
Then George also asks, do the McGinnis and Dumaine papers talk about other financial matters or only the New Haven?
We don't have the McGinnis papers. I mean, we have his records that were generated when he was president of the railroad, and a lot of like his speeches and other writings. I'm sorry. Well, are you saying about other railroads? We don't have like when he was with B&M, and when he went to federal prison. So actually, McGinnis is it's hard to find information about Patrick McGinnis. There is a small set of information just about his public persona, his kind of brash public persona, but not a lot about him as the man. I can recommend Mark Fatasio's book, about New Haven in the McGinnis era. He stemmed a tremendous amount of research on McGinnis, but the collection has some, but it's, you know, he was president of the New Haven for 20 months, so that's, you know, that's all we have of him.
Okay. George has one more question.
Okay.
Cass Gilbert designed several stations along the line from New Rochelle into the Bronx.
Right.
Many still exist but are derelict. Does the archive have photos of them when they were newly built?
Well, first off, let me tell you that we do have architectural drawings. We have a very limited number of architectural drawings, and I do know that we have that at least 2 of them, and forgive me, I blanked on which ones, but we do have architectural drawings for 2 Cass Gilbert structures. You know, as I told you earlier, we have thousands and thousands of photographs of New Haven Railroad stations and structures or whatever. We very likely have Cass Gilbert structures, you know, when they were first built. I can't tell you specifically which ones. You know, if you email me, you know, laura.katz.smith@uconn.edu. If you pose that question to me, then I can do some research on your behalf and try to find that out. The thing is, the photographs are not tagged as Cass Gilbert. You know, if you tell me specifically which railroad stations you're looking for, then I can find the photo of the railroad station. But I can't do like a word search under Cass Gilbert, because that's not how they're described.
Great. We had a question regarding the Dodd Center facility itself. What level of fire protection is there for the archive?
The a very high quality, you know, and state of the art. We are a state of the art and facility. We are unique in that our building was designed as an archival facility. So our storage areas are of which Tom and Bob are very well acquainted with. They've been in them. They have full, you know, fire suppression. They have humidity and temperature control. When I first started working at UConn, I was told that in the event of like a catastrophic energy failure, you know, electrical failure, there are 3 areas of the university that will always be provided electricity, no matter what. And the first one is the president's office. The second one is the animal labs on campus. And the third one is the archives. So I don't know how true that is, but we are a very unique facility, and that we are uniquely designed to preserve and store our collections.
Okay. Early on, you mentioned that the archive and collection is pretty much limited to Southern New England. What do you consider Southern New England? And then I'll go into a follow-up question from one of
pretty
our,
much the New Haven Railroad territory. So Connecticut, all of Rhode Island, kind of Boston to Cape Cod to Great Barrington, you know, to the west, and then because the railroad went into eastern New York, you know, Westchester County into Orange County, and into New York City. So I will accept materials from that, from those areas.
So basically, will you accept material that is not related in some way, shape, or form to the New Haven Railroad?
Okay, that's the thing is I have gotten offered collections that have, let me rephrase this. The collection has to have some kind of connection to the New Haven Railroad or its predecessors or its successors. If there are other elements of the collection, like for instance, Jack Swanberg's photographs, you know, I have photos that he took when he was in France and when he was in Spain and Mexico and the West and in Canada. But the core of his collection is the New Haven Railroad. So I'll accept, you know, kind of those tangents depending on, you know, depending on their historical value, but there has to be a connection to the New Haven Railroad or Southern New England, you know, even, you know, Providence and Worcester or CV or, you know, that kind of thing. So, yeah, you know, I can't accept, like if collection is just B&M, you know, Boston and Maine, I can't accept that. I just, there's no, I can't start accepting materials that are not related to Southern New England, because then it will just get out of hand, you know. And I have my hands full with New Haven as
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
So that goes in, and I think you may well have just answered the rest of the question from Ian Batchelder, who asks, my collection of railroad items is large, but only a small portion of it has any bearing to the New Haven Railroad or to Connecticut. Does that mean you would be interested in it? And I take it that the only part of the collection you might be interested in would be those parts that relate to the New Haven Railroad.
Okay, so I contact me. I'm sorry, whoever posed that question. Yeah, contact me. Let's talk about your collection. You know, I will never accept a collection sight unseen. I want to know the details. You know, I will take portions of collections, but if you're looking, you know, I mean, a lot of people do kind of split up their collections. Ideally, you know, you don't want to do that, but you know, I'll accept a collection that has non-New Haven materials, but it has to be. There has to be some kind of overriding reason for it, and that's kind of on an individual case-by-case basis. I can't say never, but I'm just not going to accept something just because it's, you know, I don't, whatever. Any other questions?
Oh yeah, well, they're pouring in here. I don't know that they're pouring in, but we've got a few more.
So you posed that question, let me do, I said I was going to talk about, you know, after the pandemic shutdown. Right now, our archives is closed still. It's crazy. The university is planning to open on August 15th. And even though the library and the archives, we have not made definite decisions on what we're going to do, we're hoping that we'll be like by appointment only in the fall, but I can't guarantee that. So the only thing I can say is just keep an eye on either on our webpage or contact me directly. Say, hey, you know, I want to come in to do research. The thing is, if you do have a reference query, you can contact me anyway. You know, if I can make a copy from the collection, just because I know what you're looking for, then I'll do that. Actually, what I did with Tom when I met him, I can't do that regularly, so that's not really something I can offer anymore. But hopefully in 2 months we will be open to the public, even on a appointment only basis, and hopefully by 2022 we'll be fully open again, depending on what happens with COVID.
Steve Provost asks, what does UConn have on the Springfield maintenance area?
I cannot answer that question. I'd have to look in the collection.
Okay, great.
I don't know. You know, I mean, the thing is, you know, again, I get these, when you pose a question, I do not know every piece of paper and every item of the, you know, of the 2 million items that are in the collection. Okay. Even though I've been with this collection for 22 years, I am constantly learning this collection. So please, you know, whoever posed that question to me, please email me, and I'll get back to you and I'll answer your question. I can't answer it when I don't have access, as I do right now, to our collection management system and the digital archive.
So here's a different sort of question. Walt Sapolsky asks, if a storage box is not full, how do you keep the materials vertical so they don't slip into a position where they could bend?
We put them in smaller boxes.
There you go, Walt.
Yeah, I
Obvious
mean,
answer.
if the collection, if somebody, I mean, when we store, when we put our materials in archival quality boxes, we will always, we have boxes that are what we call, that are a quarter foot, half foot, cubic foot. We'll find the right size
So
box.
we saw rows and
we're not
rows of
gonna-
bankers. We saw rows and rows of bankers.
Yeah, I mean, I do have some collections that, for one reason or other, the box is not full. So I'll do something like, I'll take archival quality stiff paper and I'll kind of bunch it up, and that will prop up the folder. But we have many different sizes, archival boxes. So we find the right size box. We're not going to waste space. Space is at a premium in the archives. So we will always try to consolidate and be efficient, and we don't waste space in the archives.
Okay, Roma and Dirk, and I'm guessing it's probably Roma, asks, what are the copyright arrangements for using photo and text in articles for newsletters and magazine articles?
Okay, so, I did speak earlier about copyright. The thing is, just because everything is owned by the UConn archives. So if you do want to publish items, you need to ask our permission, because we are the owner of the archives. Many of the items have unattributed creators, meaning we don't know who took the photograph. We don't know who created the document. So if it is, generally the date now is 1923 for items, anything before 1923. I think copyright law is extremely complicated. It's a lot more complicated than people assume, people think it is, but generally before 1923, it can be used, no problem. But after 1923, if you're using an item, if you want to publish an item and you don't know who the photographer is, basically you're just taking the chance that the photographer is not going to appear and say, hey, you're using my item, whatever profit you're making from using my item, I want a cut of it. Now, I routinely give permission for use of the materials. The thing is that, it is the researcher and the publisher's responsibility to find the copyright holder and to ask permission. But when you have an item, as so many of our items are complete, we don't know the photographer, people are just using it and they're taking their chances. It is for the older the item is, the likelihood of somebody claiming, if somebody claims that they're the photographer, they have to have proof. And also the use of the item has to be such that someone's actually making a profit. So, a lot of the publishers, a lot of the authors that I'm dealing with, you all, when you're writing your railroad books, you're not making a big profit. So the use of the items can be, you can use them kind of at will, but the concept of fair use, the concept of copyright, it's very complex, a lot more complex than you think it is. But basically, in a nutshell, if you're using an item from the UConn archives, you do have to ask permission, but I will almost always give permission. I don't deny use. I mean, we're in archives because we want people to use the materials. We're not gonna just arbitrarily tell people they can't publish it or use it in whatever way.
Laura, you have a standard credit line, right? So I've seen a lot of things, particularly the stuff from the Willimantic Railroad Museum, having their calendars. They used a lot of.
Yeah, and also a lot of our photos are used for Shoreliner.
Yeah.
And they attribute it, courtesy Archives and Special Collections, UConn Library. Yeah. And that's the thing is, that's all thank you for bringing that up, Tom, because if you are using an item from our collection, we ask that we're at least attributed. Mm-hmm. And we do have a commercial use fee, but that's like if you're Time Magazine or, if you're just writing a railroad book, there's no fee, we're not going to charge a fee, commercial use fee.
We had the same policy at the Smithsonian, or
Right.
generally the same policy at the Smithsonian. If it was a friend of ours who was publishing it in a scholarly article and not getting money for it, we could usually convince the copyright department to let him have it. But if it was being published in a Skira book or something, they had to pay the $150 per photograph. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it was great to see that you have Frank Donovan's collection there.
Right.
I'll just make a comment that Frank was a dear friend to me and others in the club and to the railroad enthusiasts. And it was in fact a donation several years ago that provided the impetus for the creation of the Mass Bay Railroad Enthusiasts Railroad Preservation Fund and our grant program. So it's great to see that his materials were there. It was also, I was very pleased to, I'd actually written down as a question when you showed the Benton photograph as to whether you'd been in touch with Bob Beletsky, and sure enough, you have big time, and that's great to see.
I'm in frequent touch with Bob.
He
He gives me a lot of advice on railroad history projects.
So did he offer a possible identification of the gentleman standing on top of that boxcar?
Yes, it's Francis Drake.
So Irving Drake. Francis Drake is the explorer. Irving is the real, but not Dave.
Yeah.
Not only that, but the car is Drake's car. It's a Willis Knight.
Yeah, I was actually looking for the bicycle.
Right, the bicycle was before Drake came along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suspect that's the reason somebody whited it out, because he wasn't supposed to be up there. Yeah. Okay. So Walt Sapolsky asks, researchers such as Len Batchelder and authors of the Shoreliner articles have done wonderful work from primary sources. Are items like these in the archives? I'm not quite sure exactly what that means.
Yeah, Dave.
Yep.
Dave, I can answer that.
Great.
Irving, I was looking for stuff on William Moneypenny that supplied the bucks to get number 9 down from Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington. And in Fran Donovan's papers, there was a lovely little small typed letter from Irving Drake that said something to the effect that, I haven't heard from you in a long time. Bill Moneypenny came to visit us during the convention and stayed with us. We're hoping to go visit him in Florida. And this was just a wonderful thing to find. And it proved that Moneypenny was living into the 60s, proved that he was a friend of Drake's. It was great. And that's a lovely little piece of primary, a letter from Drake is primary stuff that you couldn't get anywhere else.
Cool. Okay. Are there any more questions from the those watching on the webinar? If there's any more, get them typed in. Otherwise, if anybody, we do have a couple here. Oh, I guess, okay, Walt rephrases this question. Are the archives only primary materials?
We have a very large collection of books, and there are many, and there are many items of which there are duplicates, like annual reports and timetables, and but yeah, I mean, yes, that we're, as an archive, we are. We're just interested in unique materials. So if you're thinking, let me know what other types of materials you're talking about if you're not thinking of primary sources.
And Len Batchelder comments that some of his written brochures, and just by way of explanation, for many years, Len Batchelder did a lot of original research and produced these voluminous route guides and historical descriptions for railroad enthusiast excursions. And we have a fairly complete collection of them, but Len says that some of his brochures have been donated to you as they were included in the Emmons Lancaster collection. So,
let me tell you that one thing that I generally will not accept are like photocopies from other archival facilities, because a lot of people, they do their research, they're making photocopies from, the Rhode Island Historical Society or, or Yale University or whatever. And then they want to donate that collection of their photocopies to the UConn library, to the UConn archives. And I'm not going to accept something like that because it's not original material. And I cannot tell people they can publish a photo from a photocopy because that's not the original item. So, so actually for Len's, for Walter's question, we want the original source. I'm not going to accept like a photocopy of a pamphlet. I want the original pamphlet. While we will accept like born digital photos, people are taking digital photos now, but if you have the original print, if you have a print of the item or a negative of the item, I want the negative or the print. I don't want a scan of the print. I want the original item.
How do you
always want the raw source, the raw material?
Okay. How do you store 35 millimeter slides?
We have, we put it in, they're this archival quality, we take it out of the carousels. We will not store it in the carousel. And we will put it in those, the sleeves, the archival quality plastic sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we store those. We will not keep it in the carousel. That is not preservationally, that's not adequate for preservation.
But so being in an archival quality transparent page makes them easier to view without having to actually handle the slide.
Well, it does make it easier to view, but but I'm mostly thinking about what's going to extend the life of this item, and keeping it in a plastic carousel is not a good preservation means to extend the life of the item.
Okay. We have a last question from the audience. Are you running out of space?
Yes and no. I mean, in the same way that like when you're packing your bag for vacation, you always find a little corner, to put your extra stuff in. I'm very choosy about what I take, just because I am always conscious of space. I have six other colleagues. They're collecting too. So we're all kind of competing for shelf space for the collections. We're very lucky. Not only are we a facility that has, it's ideal for preserving materials, we're kind of unique in that all our materials are currently stored on site. There are a lot of academic libraries that have off-site storage facilities. So you have to like make an appointment to use, to call up an item. We don't do that. If you want an item and I need to get it from the storage stacks for you, I can do that immediately. I don't have to call for it from an off-site facility. But space is an issue. That's why I have, that's one reason why I have to be choosy. But also, I only want to get meaningful research material into the archive. I'm not gonna take things, and also I've been doing this for 30 years. So I know what people are looking for. I think I have a good sense of even though you might think, oh, this is really historically important. If I look at an item and I know that nobody's ever gonna ask for it, I'm not gonna accept it.
Okay, there are a few more questions have popped in. Tom Engel observes that some of those slide sleeves can melt onto the slides if you have any warmth around. so I'll ask, are the archival quality
Yeah,
slide pages?
it's not a regular plastic. It's
There you go.
I spaced on the name. It's an
They're
quality plastic. And also our storage areas are humidity and temperature controlled, so they're not going to get warm. Nothing's going to melt.
Yep.
And do you ever get rid of materials once you've accepted them into the archive?
That's a great question. We do not. We don't collect materials only to get rid of them. We collect them so they can be a historical source for posterity. I can't say that we haven't, I mean, personally, I've never deaccessioned something from the railroad collection. I know that we've transferred collections to other facilities. Like we had one collection of voting records that went to the Hartford History Center. The Connecticut Historical Society will often deaccession something and it will come to us. We get things from the Matitech Museum in Waterbury. We will not take in a collection and then, as people are afraid archives do, will not turn around and sell it. We don't do that. We don't put our items up on eBay. We take in a collection to keep it. Or, with the deed of gift, if we decide that there are elements in the collection that we don't want to keep, then we will return them to the donor, if that's what they choose. Otherwise, we'll shred something. If something came in the collection and we didn't mean for it to be in the collection, we'll shred it.
Okay.
That's our practice, is not to get rid of collections.
Right. Thank you. Roma Hurdle asks, are you training up other archivists?
Well, we do. We hire a lot of student assistants, UConn students, and it's very, very gratifying that it seems that many of them, after they work for us for a while, they want to become archivists. So we think, it's on-the-job training. We also do take in interns from Simmons College. Simmons, actually, I think it's Simmons University now. Simmons University and Southern Connecticut State University are the only library science programs in the region, in the area. So we do take in interns from them. We have a program where if they need on-site intern time, then we will work with them. Yeah. And I've given tours to people who are interested in being archivists or librarians. I've talked to groups of prospective librarians and archivists about what it's like being a working archivist. So yeah, we do. We're always trying to cultivate, the next generation of archivists.
Okay, and one more here from David. I don't know which of the Davids we've got this is, but asks, says, the archive has a great interactive online map of the VAL maps, but it's incomplete. When will all the VAL maps be added? Okay.
I wish I had another half hour to explain the VAL map situation. We put up that VAL map in, I think, 2010, and the maps were in an old system that we had to transition them over, and we lost a lot of data in the transition, and the links into what we call the mashup, they got lost, and then we had to re-implement them, and then they changed the server for the maps. But I can tell you that right now, we do have a doctoral student. It's very high-level work. We need a doctoral student in geography to be doing the work to get the maps into that mashup. So we do have someone working on it right now. The problem is that we don't have every single map of the New Haven system. We do have gaps, like in Western Connecticut, particularly the Naugatuck Railroad line. So it's never going to be fully complete. we're working on it, but you know what, given, in internet years, that 10, 12 years is a lifetime in internet years. Things, web pages, systems change. I've tried. The problem with it is that I personally do not have the expertise to maintain it. I have to rely on like our Mac library staff and the graduate students and the doctoral students, and we can't always do that. So we're doing our best with that, but it's been tough.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So do any of you on the panel have any other questions or comments before we close the meeting?
I have one. Laura, if we had a collection that wasn't appropriate for you, are there other places we could try to take it? We don't have well, we have the Walker Transportation Collection up in Beverly.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some other smaller archives like the Ramsdale one that I'm involved in.
And the Boston and Maine Historical Society.
Boston Maine Historical Society, yeah, and also the Railway and Locomotive Historical Society collection out in California. But do you know of any others, or what do you know about the general grouping?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for other archives. I can't.
Sure.
I can't tell you that another archive will accept an item. Sometimes, a place like the Connecticut Historical Society or the Massachusetts Historical Society will accept collections, but again, I can't speak for them. You just have to kind of shop around.
Yeah.
I guess, choose the most likely institution first, see what they say. And, but the thing is, I will not like call up other facilities to ask on someone's behalf if they will accept a collection. I just can't do that.
Sure.
There's some collections that, again, are split, they're, I know like Ed Ozog, we have his New Haven material, but he's donated a lot of material to the Providence Public Library. People will split up their collections. It depends.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Dave, got anything?
I was just going to say, I just want to, for the people who are watching, just an affirmation and to speak from our family's experience with dealing with UConn and Laura specifically. I know my dad, obviously, as Laura mentioned, my dad brought stuff home every day in his grip from the railroad.
Be honest, your dad brought the New Haven Railroad home and put it in his basement.
Just about, and he knew that at some point he was going to die. I mean, it's just reality.
Yeah.
And he wasn't quite sure what to do, and finally, my dad and I had a conversation. I said, "Dad, you got to call UConn and talk to him at least." And he did it, and Laura came down to the house, and went through.
I visited your house about 8 or 10 times to gather the entire collection in the summer of 2017.
And to be clear, Laura did not show up with a UConn van that day. It was handled so nicely. It was treated my parents with such respect and care, because they knew this was his life's work, was putting this thing together and going through and saying, okay, because not everything that my dad went to UConn.
Yeah.
Because not that we split it up, but some stuff just wasn't, like Laura said, some stuff was just not appropriate. And so we still have some stuff. We have all the hard goods, but we still have some paperwork, but some stuff, it just wasn't appropriate to be at UConn. But, Laura came down time after time and went through with, and I think you have people with you probably, right? Are you all by yourself?
Just maybe once I had
Yeah.
a colleague with me, but
Yeah.
mostly it was just me going
Yeah.
going
So
down. And,
would
you know,
Comet
and
go
I boxed
through?
up maybe 6 or 8 boxes, put it in my car, and then come back 2 weeks later. You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at the end, my dad took great solace in knowing that that stuff was going to be preserved, well handled, and that people had always been coming to the house to research stuff. You know, talk about Mark Fratazio. He came over and did a lot of stuff. And the Haven Power book, a lot of my dad's pictures are in there. That was all done research at the house. But
See now Mark Fratazio says, hey, you know, I know that in the Peters collection is, you know, a certain thing. Can
Right.
you make a copy of it for me? Or,
Right.
you know, so I might scan it and put it in the digital repository. So
Yep.
now it's online and anybody can see it.
right, and so people who are watching tonight, please do not feel that you can't call up the UConn Library and Laura and that it's going to go waste. It's a great resource. Laura was just saying before about she was working on that video about the comet, right? One of you said, Laura, it was like you weren't sure, so you went into my dad's archive. There's a whole folder on the comet.
Right.
You know, just
Multiple folders on Comet. You know, just you never. That collection is so rich and so extraordinary.
and the UConn library is not just my dad's stuff. There's lots of great stuff in there. So it's wonderful. Well done.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, well, Laura, I just want to thank you for a fascinating look at the collection and some insight on what we can do to save or not save the stuff that we think is so precious. So with that, we're going to end the main program here. So we'll be stopping the Facebook live stream and stopping the recording. If you're viewing this as a webinar and you'd like to stick around for a little bit and chat, please use the raised hand feature and raise your hand and we will admit you into your own little Hollywood square as quickly as we can. Laura may not stick around for the whole thing. It's up
I'm
to her.
leaving, so thank you everyone. Goodbye.
Okay, that settles
Right,
that.
thank you very much,
Thanks,
Laura.
Thank you,
That
Laura.
was outstanding. Yeah.
Chase.